What is up, dudes and dudettes? This is, of course, your guy, Sugi JRPG here, and today I'm gonna be giving my analysis slash commentary on this new Final Fantasy XVI footage that we got to see yesterday on PAX East. Now, this is gonna be a very well-rounded, objective take on things. Instead of going full-on fanboy or full-on hater, I just really want to give you the pros and the cons based on the footage that I saw and how did I feel about it. So there were a lot of new information included on this new footage. So one of the things that they basically showed out was the menus and the equip systems. And there was some critique about the menus kind of looking very plain, especially the main menu. And I kind of agree with that assessment. Then again, we have to remember that this was not the final build of the game. So it's not totally out of the question that they will be doing some type of an overhaul on that main menu and change a couple of things around and make it look a bit better. And then we obviously got to see the equip system, and what we have here is a 1 weapon slot, 1 sash, and 1 wristband, and then there's 3 accessories. And there's actually a lot more than what we had in Final Fantasy 15, because there was only a weapon, and then there was a 1 armor item, and I think there was 3 accessories which you would gradually gain throughout the game. And I think this was definitely a step in the right direction of going more into these traditional Final Fantasy games where there was a lot more items to basically equip and allowed you to have more customization. And I think it's a very key component about any RPG game. I'm not saying that there should be like a full-on like Diablo inventory where there's like 12 different armor pieces and weapons, but I think there should be a couple of items obviously which may or may not change the way that your character looks. So the equip system seems to be rather good so far. And then there was this very brief look into the skill tree. They were not supposed to show that, but we kind of got a bit of a glimpse what it looks like, and it seemed very similar to what we had in Final Fantasy 15. So it was kind of like this circle thing. It was not a spear grid, and I believe these were all combat related. It didn't show you the whole screen, and like there seemed to be like multiple trees there, but I have the assessment here that everything that you learn through the skill tree are like passive abilities and active abilities and maybe some stat bonuses, but there doesn't seem to be like anything utility based like you had in 15, which were not necessarily related to combat, which was kind of interesting design to begin with, and I didn't really mind it, but it kind of tells you perhaps there's not really that much in the world to be interacted with. Like there was like those fishing, skills that you could basically learn and get AP while you're driving. These were kind of interesting, but I don't think that there's going to be anything like that in this one. Now, in terms of the footage also, we saw a lot of the world, and we're going to be talking about that in a detail in a second. And we saw that you can travel with a chocobo. We didn't really see, are you able to like fly or jump with the chocobo? And then we got to see, obviously, Clive walking and running in the field, so you're going to have this sort of like a speed boost, but he's not able to bunny hop. Now, the thing about bunny hops is that I think it's a very important feature. It seems like kind of filler, and it doesn't really matter in terms of like gameplay aspects, but it just makes you feel a bit more interactive, and I just don't really mind even like very base level like world exploration through that level design, and I'm going to be touching upon that bit later. But like, for example, in the new Star Ocean game, there was quite a lot of like movement that you could basically do around the world, and that's kind of something that builds out more immersion. But we have to see like whatever there's going to be airships in the game. Is there going to be some type of carts that you can ride, or is it just chocobos and just like walking and running? Then there was like a fair amount of footage of the Eikon fights. It basically showed Bahamut. I think there was the Ifrit fight. There were like a couple of others. I think there's like 6 of these Eikons in total, plus the Dark Ifrit. And then there seemed to be like some type of a other monster also in the fight. I'm not sure, was that an Eikon? So maybe there's like some other boss fights which are going to be fought in the Eikon form as well. That's all fine. I was never really super into this concept, but I'm not like totally against it or anything. It seems like this sort of a kaiju fan service, like the Japanese like their kaiju Godzilla stuff and these big things fighting, and that's probably their approach, what they really went on for here. And to me, they are kind of more like cinematic experiences and kind of like build out the aspect of these Eikons and like what they are in the world. And I think it does, like from a storytelling perspective and from a visual perspective, a good job. But then again, like it kind of makes me think about like if they would have gone into this route where there would have been two different combat systems in the game. So for example, there could have been like a action RPG combat with airships, and then when you're not on airship battles, the normal battles are actually turn-based. So it could have been a blend of action RPG with the normal turn-based thing. So that's something that they could have done here. Obviously, having like turn-based Eikon fights wouldn't be like that cinematically interesting or anything, but that could have been something that they could have gone as a design choice here. But you know, I guess this is the direction they wanted to go with, and they don't seem to be, you know, very. It seems like Square has kind of abandoned the idea that the turn-based system can actually be innovated on and kind of be made more interesting and faster and all these types of things. They kind of have like dropped the ball on this one, but hopefully they will reconsider that. Now, the other thing that we got to see a lot was these cities and dungeons, and visually they looked very good. Iconic and well designed, especially some of the crystal things and dungeons, and the towns seem to be like having their own type of flavor as well. At least we got to see two different towns here and one like a city, and those towns kind of seemed like different from each other. At least I'm pretty sure that they were from different locations. So this was pretty good. This kind of gets into a segue of the point that I have the biggest critique with this game right now. So what makes a semi-open world or open world game is the level of interaction that the world has with the actual player. So prime examples of games that have done fantastically on these things are like Red Dead Redemption 2, Baldur's Gate 3, and Elden Ring, for instance. And the interaction is really broken down into three different segments, or three pillars basically. The first is level design. So this includes things like platforming, being able to jump around in the roofs of the city, climb a rocky mountain, able to travel in different ways. And another thing that kind of makes level design important is obviously exploration. So we didn't really see that there were any treasure chests in the cities or hidden pathways or different things like that. And I think that's a very key part about like old Final Fantasy games, like finding those secret chests and maybe doing some random puzzle to basically get the chest dropped from a tree or something like that. So that was kind of like something, part of the exploration, part of the way you interacted with the zone, whatever it's a dungeon or a city. And this is something that doesn't seem to be really existing in Final Fantasy 16. Then another thing about level design is obviously physics engine. So there's like a ways to basically knock off enemy from a cliff or something like that, and they will do extra damage, or you're able to basically fall from a cliff and die yourself. So these are types like physics engine can be like making things very much interesting and much more funnier and enjoyable to basically interact with a game. Whatever it's like in Red Dead Redemption, you're like riding with a train, or you're riding with a horse and you're jumping off with a horse, like a different experience in that game. The second thing is obviously like presentation and visual style. The locations have to look like immersive and memorable, and like these are things like seeing your reflection in the water, seeing the wind move the your like cloak or some types of things in the city, and these are things like kind of break immersion. Obviously the frame drops cannot actually happen in the cities as well, because that's kind of like breaking the immersion. And I think this is something that probably out of these three pillars, this game does the best. But we haven't really seen like rain or wind or different types of things. We saw wind in actually one of the things on the previous trailer about the Garuda thing, but I need to see a bit more about like how are the physics engine, for example, in this game. Now the third and the most important thing, which a lot of modern game developers don't understand, is how you interact with the NPCs. Like, are you able to talk to the NPCs? Are you able to rob from them? Are you able to steal from them? Are you able to arrest them? Are you able to kill them? Are you able to trade with them? Do they loop the same animations and do the same expected things over and over again? Or is there some type of random factor in their design? Like in old Final Fantasy games, you could talk to every single NPC in the game. And then there obviously were in the battles, it would be always a random enemy that would come out forward and different things like that. But that's not like, that is a form of RNG, but it's not like necessarily like a great example of like great NPC design. But like you look at like Baldur's Gate 3, like you're able to trade, kill, talk to every NPC basically in the game. They're like highly interactable in a lot of ways, and that's something that we have seen with Final Fantasy 13, 15, and 7 remake, is that you're not really able to even talk to these NPCs in these cities unless they're quest givers or like vendors. Like they are there just sitting on the wall, and maybe they have some like minuscule like walk pathing, but you're not really interact with them. If you're like moving close to them, they might like have some type of text that comes out in the side, but that's, to me, it's not like this amazing example of like being able to interact with the world. So that's kind of what I'm really trying to get my point here, is that the world looks great, but am I able to like climb on the cities, jump on the rooftops? Like how interactive these locations are. In a lot of these modern JRPG games, like Tales of Arise had great level design, but there was not really a lot of ways to basically interact in the city. You would talk to the shopkeepers and the inn, and that's it. Like everything else in the world was like just like random and didn't have any purpose whatsoever. And that's something that these game developers kind of have forgotten over the years, is that the interaction of the world is the most important part that creates it immersive fundamentally. And let's hope that in the next month, when we're going to be seeing those RPG features, they are going to be bringing out things like mini games. I'm really hoping for that card game, but I don't think that may happen. Chocobo racing would be another thing that could be making more interactive, instead of just like these endless monster hunts that we got in 13 and 12. 13 was a great example of a game that had like, it was when it launched and trailers came out, it was visually very good looking, but there was no interaction. There was not even shopkeepers in the game. You would talk to this like weird digital like flying thing, which would be acting as your shop, and your like all the selling and everything would be done through that. And that was not very interactive. That was not very immersive or cool experience. So you basically, all the NPCs in that game were like totally like forgotten and totally filler. But like broadly speaking, the game does look a lot better than 15 in a lot of ways. I think it will improve significantly on the faults of 15, but I am slightly worried about the combat being a bit redundant over time, even though these different forms. I haven't exactly seen that any of these forms are like, it all seem to be melee. There doesn't seem to be like a one Eikon that basically gives you like a caster thing that you're doing a lot of long range stuff. So that's something that I'm kind of worried about in this game. Like at least in like with Noctis, he had these different weapons, like he had pole arms, he had swords, and they were like different, like bit slower attacks and different. There was some variety, and yeah, you had always gun, which you could use as a ranged weapon, so that was a bonus too. So that's kind of what I'm kind of worried about. That is, this game is very long, so is it gonna be fun to play as a one character for such a long time? And will the combat get a lot more fun as you unlock more things? Because there's no party member system here, which is every new Final Fantasy game, there's always some very weird new game design, and this idea that you're not able to control the characters, like maybe I could like ride with that, but the idea that they kind of die is simply like very dumb, and I can see like there might be some exploits doing that. But yeah, guys, like even though I'm levying this criticism about this game, I'm still thinking like, yeah, might be like game of the year, but I think it might be a bit monotone in terms of like, yes, the story is probably going to be pretty great and the combat, but is there really anything else beyond that? Like, is the exploration really fun? Are there some hidden treasure chests hidden on the map, and do I have to like go through a certain quest to basically unlock them and things like that? That's kind of like what made these games good. And in 15 they had that final dungeon where you were basically parkouring a lot. That was like, is something, sadly, I wish they would have done a lot more of that in that game, and you know, implement like, you know, some platforming in the game. But that's kind of what I really want to see, a bit of platforming, you know, a bit of exploration in the world, aside from like going to talk to the vendor in the city, and anything else in the city is not really interactable. Like, it's the museum experience. You're able to see things, but you're not able to touch. But I made my point very clear here. Obviously, more 16 content coming out, more Final Fantasy content, got a lot of things coming out, mod reviews, etc. So make sure you subscribe and leave your comments about what are you thinking about the game right now. Are you buying the game like me? Are you pre-ordering it? And what are your biggest concerns, and what are the biggest things that you're excited about regarding this game? I would like to hear that. See you guys in the next video. Cheers.